This lesson is a review of a little bit what we did in Chapter 1 when it came to graphing, but we're also going to be adding in the 4 quadrants that we have within the graph. So today we have 2 main points. The first one that I want to talk about are the ordered pairs. So remember, as a review, we graph them as x, comma, y. X is always first, y is always second. Think of it alphabetically. X comes before y. Remember, when we graph it, x means that you go left to right, or left or right on the x-axis, and for the y-axis, that's where you go up and down. So where you always start when you're graphing a point on the graph, you always start at the origin. You always start at 0, 0. Always start there. Now, when we are talking about quadrants, if you recognize that we have 4 different quadrants. We have a quadrant up here. This is the most common quadrant that we're using because all of the numbers are going to be positive. We have 2 quadrants above the x-axis, and we have 2 quadrants below the x-axis. So this quadrant is quadrant number 1. And then we go around in kind of a C motion. So this is the quadrant number 1, quadrant number 2, quadrant number 3, quadrant number 4. So by C motion, I mean we're basically going to sort of make a miniature C. You can see it, it's sort of making a C. So we go 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if we happen to have a point that's at 5, 4, that means that we are in the first quadrant. If we have a point that's in -2, -2, we are in the third quadrant. What's important? This is very important. Say that we have a point 0, 5. It's directly on the y-axis. If it's directly on the y-axis, it is not in a quadrant. Same with if it's on the x-axis. If we're at 2, 0, we are on the x-axis. It does not lie in a quadrant. That is important. So now what we're going to do, we are going to graph some of the points, and we're going to name the quadrant. So let's start off with the first one. We have 3, 1. Remember, 3 is first on the x-axis, 1 is second on the y-axis. So we are always going to start at the origin. Now 3 means we go to the right 3, then we go up 1. So our point is going to be right here. So what quadrant is that? Remember, if you want to make like a quick little mental note, we have the first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, fourth quadrant. So we've graphed this point, and it looks like we are in quadrant number 1. Now let's look at the next point. We have 0, -4. So we always start at the origin. We go to the right or left 0, so we stay right here. Then we go to -4. We go down -4. So our point is going to be right there. Now what quadrant is that in? Remember, if it lies directly on the y-axis or the x-axis, it is not in a quadrant. In this case, it lies directly on the y-axis. So there is no quadrant. So I'll just put none. Alright, now let's try the last one. We have -2, -4. So we always start at the origin. Always start at the origin. Go to the left, -2. Then we go down to the -4. Got to make our point right here. So let's look to see which quadrant that's in. It looks like it's lying in the third quadrant. And so we've made our point. It's in the third quadrant. Alright, so now I want you guys to try it yourself. Pause the video, try it. Unpause the video when you want to see the way that I have done it. Alright, so let's try and watch. Let's try this 0, 0. So, always start at the origin when we are starting to graph a point. So, on the x-axis we go to the right 0, and on the y-axis we go up or down 0. So, we are actually going to make our point at the origin. So, which quadrant does that lie in? Since it's directly on the y-axis or the x-axis, it does not lie in a quadrant. So we're just going to put none. Now let's look at -2, 5. Remember, always start at the origin. With the x-axis, we go to the left at 2. And then with 5, we go up 5. And we're going to make our point right here. So now which quadrant is it? If you need help, we can always just make it the C. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like this is in the second quadrant. So we made our point, and it's in quadrant 2. Now if we have 4, -3, we can start at the origin. Always start at the origin when you're plotting points, and you go over to the right 4, and then you go down -3. We'll make our point right here. Now that we've made our point, we have to figure out which quadrants it's in. So since it's down in this box, we are in quadrant 4. So for this example, what I want you to do is to create a table and graph it. So I'm going to give you the equation y equals x plus 2. So the very first thing that you could do is create a table. Remember, we have our x and our y, so we can just create an x and a y table. Now, all that we would need to do is to come up with any numbers that we want for x. So I can just start off as -1, 0, 1, and 2. Now all I have to do is take this -1, plug it into x. So let's see here. If we have x plus 2, if it's -1 plus 2, -1 plus 2 is 1. Now we would just do that with the next 3. So 0 plus 2 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 2 plus 2 is 4. Now if you notice, we have some points. We have -1, 1, 0, 2, 1, 3, and 2, 4. Now all that we have to do is just graph these points. So if we have -1, 1, so we go to the left, we just start at the origin, go -1, 1, put our point. And then if we go to 0, 2, and then 1, 3, and 2, 4. If you notice, it looks like it is making a straight line, so all that we would have to do is to draw a straight line connecting all of the points and so this is our graph of the equation y is equal to x plus 2. This is our graph This is our table.